Greetings, Wrestle Buddies. I am your host, Nick, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Wrestle Buddy Interviews. I am joined today by one of my favourite wrestlers in the world. I cannot believe I managed to land this interview. I am joined today by the fantastic Aries. Mr. Aries, how are you doing?
Good, Nick. How's it going? How you doing there across the pond? You all right?
Yeah, not bad. It's raining, but it's always raining over here. But it's still quite warm, so we can't complain. We can't really complain. Right, I'm just going to get straight into things, Austin, if you don't mind, because I've got loads to ask you, and I'm really curious to hear your responses. First of all, I just want to go back to the very beginning of your career. What or who inspired you to become a professional wrestler?
I grew up a huge pro wrestling fan since the age of 4. Was always kind of one of my passions that in sports. I never really thought about getting into the wrestling business. Growing up in the 80s and the 90s, we didn't have things like Google or the internet. So to even find out where you would go to train to be a pro wrestler was kind of secretive, right? You kind of had to know somebody who knew somebody. And luckily for me, a childhood friend of mine was training to be a wrestler up in Minnesota at a time in my life where I was trying to figure out my path, post college, and I say fate just kind of, met me and offered the opportunity to start training. And, when I saw that ring set up in Eddie Sharkey and Terry Fox's school up in Minneapolis, I knew from the second I saw it that this is what I wanted to do. So I moved up on his couch and started training a week later. And here we are, 22 years after the fact.
Oh, that's fantastic. I always wanted to know. Thank you for answering. To move a bit further forward, and this is a bit more personal for me because I'm English. When you were touring the British Indie scene, what was it like for you, and what are your fondest memories from that time in your career?
Oh man, well, just the idea that you reach a certain point in your career that somebody would fly you to another country, and that you would have legions of fans there supporting you is pretty amazing. Especially when you consider where you started out, in a small local area. One thing I always realized was how passionate and grateful the fans were, because this wasn't an opportunity. They weren't spoiled, so to speak, with having these top talents on a regular basis. So when they had these big shows going back to the 1PW shows and things like that early in the 2000s, they were getting a chance to see a lot of talent up close in person that they didn't get a chance to before. So, they were always, a lot of energy, super excited and grateful. And always too, like even after the shows, real inviting, real personable, I had a lot of good conversations and hanging out with the fans after the shows in the bars or the restaurants. And so, yeah, it was always a good experience.
Fantastic. Well, just to drop in a little fact, I got to watch you win a world title in Defiant Wrestling a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Fantastic match.
Thank you.
Fantastic match. It was when you were wearing your News of the World, as I call them, tights, and you were in your belt, and you were in your belt collector phase. Do you remember how that came about? Like how you ended up being picked to win that world title, or was it just something that was decided off the cuff?
Yeah, I don't remember specifically. I think I'm trying to remember exactly. A lot of that belt collector stuff just kind of happened organically. It certainly wasn't something I set out and when I talked to promoters, it's like, well, here's my plan. I'm going to win all the titles. So I think it started with I was working for another company over there, and boy, I'm having a hard time remembering now. Gee, that seems so long ago. But yeah, I just kind of started collecting. I think I was in Australia and I'd won that championship, and then I was working for a couple of different companies in England. And I think it was one of those things where at the time I was a very hot commodity. I just left WWE. Obviously, I had already had a reputation on the independent scene, and so I felt like the promoters were in a position where they thought that by putting their titles on me, it was going to help kind of raise the visibility of their respective promotions. And that was kind of my goal as well, right? Is kind of create this opportunity to have a bunch of different smaller promotions that maybe didn't get a lot of coverage, and hopefully give them a chance, put them on a bit of a spotlight on them to help them grow and help the fans, kind of find some new places that they weren't maybe aware of.
No, that's fantastic. Just to go a little bit backwards in your time, you are synonymous with Ring of Honor in its early days. Okay. I love Ring of Honor, I always have. Your matches against Samoa Joe were just... but with considering your history with Ring of Honor, what do you feel is the current future for Ring of Honor with the new system they have in place? And do you feel it's a benefit for Ring of Honor, or do you feel it's going to fall flat on its face?
I mean, I don't think it's going to fall flat on its face. I think that, they've got some stability now, with Tony Khan, obviously financially. He's a big wrestling fan. And I think one of the criticisms, if you call it that the fans have had of AEW is that they're a bit oversaturated. They have so much talent and only so much TV time, right? And so guys and girls can get lost in the shuffle. I think now that you bring a whole separate brand that has its own lineage, its own history, and a lot of the guys and girls in AEW have some connection to Ring of Honor, I think it's just going to provide more opportunity for those talents to be seen, to have a place. And, one way or another, through all the trials and tribulations, Ring of Honor's always found a way to survive. There's been multiple times where people have kind of written them off or left them for dead, but they've always found a way. And you can credit, Kerry Silkin, keeping it alive, going to, Sinclair Broadcasting, and now with Tony Khan taking it over. So, I think it's in good hands. And the thing with Ring of Honor is the talent's always driven the bus, and it's always been the calling card is that the best professional wrestlers are going to be in Ring of Honor. I don't see that really changing. It seems that style has kind of become the style of pro wrestling, across the board. But, Ring of Honor is still going to be unique. And again, still have its own history to pull from and still have a ton of talent. So I don't think you're going to see much of a change. If anything, I think there's an opportunity for it to grow and have an even bigger platform and be seen by a wider audience, which would be a great thing.
Fantastic. Now, another personal question for me. My favourite time in your career was when you were with Bobby Roode and the Dirty Heels. I loved that tag team. Like, the whole run. It was funny. The matches were fantastic. I love that. What was it like working with Bobby? Because he seems like such a great guy. And just, do you prefer to be in a tag team, or do you prefer singles?
I don't know that I have a preference per se. I really enjoy tag wrestling. It's something that, especially at this point in my career, I'm looking for, right? I've been kind of keeping an eye out for a partner that would make sense or would make a good complement to me. Being in my 40s now, starting to slow down just a little bit on the physical part, but feeling like I've got a lot more now to give in the psychological and mental area of pro wrestling. So, working with Bobby, he's a pro's pro. We have a little bit of a different personality, which I thought on screen really worked, with him being a little more straightforward and dry, and me being a little more quirky and charismatic. So I thought we played off each other that way. And so, I really enjoyed that. And the funny thing is that the name Dirty Heels, I'm trying to remember what country I was in. I want to say maybe it was Ireland, or maybe it was Scotland, but we were over there doing the European tour. And I went to like an H&M at the mall, and I don't remember exactly what I was looking for, but I was just in the mall checking some things out. And I saw these shirts over in the women's department, and they were these white tank tops with rhinestones, and they said Dirty Heels on them. And the minute I saw them, the light bulb went on, and I said, this is it, right? I got us matching shirts. I gave him one. Nice. I had the other one, and that was how Dirty Heels became a thing. And I had a lot of fun with that tag team. And right now the tag team scene in pro wrestling in general is phenomenal. So I would love to find a full-time partner, someone I could really develop some chemistry with, and kind of put my hat in that tag team market right now. And there's whether it's FTR, the Briscoes, You know, Rock and Roll Express are finishing up their Hall of Fame career. You know, there's so many tag teams out there right now that I'd love to get in the ring with.
That'd be amazing. I'd like to see you versus Rock and Roll. That'd be something to watch.
Yeah. So, guys, all your listeners out there, if you have any ideas, you know, who might make a good tag partner for me? You know, I've been in some great tag teams. Me and Roderick Strong, obviously, was one of the first ones. Bobby Roode and myself. So now I'm looking for that next partner that can take us to that next level.
That's an interesting question. I'll have to have a think on that one. I'll come up with an idea. I'll tweet you after the show. Sticking with TNA, I've always wondered, while you were there, because we've heard so many stories as journalists about what the backstage structure was like in TNA. We've heard that it was chaotic. We've heard that it was misorganized. What was it actually like when you were there?
Chaotic, disorganized. It was. Listen, it was difficult at times, you know, and there was a lot of different. I was there through a lot of different reiterations with different people in charge, and it was difficult sometimes to come to work and try to stay in a positive mindset. Just things with contracts being reinterpreted, changing pay structures, taking away accommodations, you know, and that mostly affected the guys and girls that were on the lower end of the totem pole, you know, that didn't have agents negotiating their contract, that didn't have these things written in. And, you know, were these independent contractors who a lot of times in this industry were owned, or we're treated like we're owned, we're treated like we're employees, but yet we don't have those same benefits. And so, you know, I got a bit of a reputation of being hard to work with, and I think in part that was in part because of the situation I was trying to work in, and being a little outspoken about some of the things that I thought were unfair. In the way the talent was being treated, the way the contracts were being interpreted, you know. But putting all that aside, you know, when the bell rings, you know, I mean, you push those things aside and you go out there and you perform. And that's one thing I'll credit all the men and women of Impact and TNA over the years was, no matter what difficulties there may or may not have been behind the scenes, when we stepped out of the curtain, you know, we really delivered and performed. And you know, I'd say for a lot of years, talent was the reason why that company stayed afloat, not because of the business decisions that were being made in the back. And, you know, to be fair to the people running the company, it's not easy to run a pro wrestling company. It's not easy keeping 50, 60 people under contract happy all at the same time. You know, someone like Dixie Carter, you know, who I appreciate what she was able to do there. But she was also stepping into an unknown, and you know she didn't come from the world of pro wrestling, and so a lot of times you can kind of get strung along or pulled in different directions by people with their agendas. So, listen, in any business, there's politics, you know, there's the good and the bad that comes with you know, the business aspect of these things. And as a talent, you try to block it out the best you can. You try to focus on what you can control. But you know, there's an old saying: it's not personal, it's just business. But when the business is affecting your pay and you're putting your foot on your table and taking care of those that you love, it's hard to separate sometimes the business and the personal, because those things tend to bleed into one another.
I understand that. It must be very difficult at times, especially in the position a lot of professional wrestlers are in, as you say, when you are supposed to be independent contractors, but you're treated like employees with half the rights of employees. It's always been baffling to me.
Yeah, and there's also this weird thing that as I've gotten older, I've had a little more clarity in. But when we're inside the pro wrestling bubble, there's this like level of hierarchy, you know. And so if you're at a certain level, you get talked to a certain way, you get treated a certain way. If you're at a perceived lower level, you get talked to differently, you get treated differently. And I guess my problem I always had with that is if you take us outside of the bubble of pro wrestling, we're all just human beings. I'm a grown-ass man. paying my bills, putting my pants on the same way as everybody else. And I just wanted to be talked to like a man, like a human being. I don't want to be belittled or talked down to because you perceive yourself to be above me on the totem pole. And conversely, I don't want to talk down to other people because I consider myself to be above them on the totem pole. And it's easy to lose sight of that, and it's easy to buy into that, false narrative of, who's above who and who's below who. And so I think sometimes it just comes down to that: is no matter where anybody is on the card, is let's all try to treat each other with the same amount of respect. Because when you take us out of that bubble of pro wrestling, we're all just human beings trying to make our way through life the best we can.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I really couldn't. Moving on a bit. After you'd done a wonderful run in TNA, multiple-time world champion, creator of Option C, multiple-time record-breaking X Division champion, just fantastic run in WWE. You must have had when your contract came up, I imagine you must have had all the opportunities in the world to go to other companies. But you chose WWE and you chose NXT. Why did you do? Why was that? How did that decision come about?
I mean, it was kind of a no-brainer in a way.
Okay.
I'd done literally everything that I'd ever set out to accomplish, right? But there was one thing I hadn't done. And my goal when I got into pro wrestling was never to go to WWE. I mean, that wasn't the goal that I set out necessarily. My goal was to call myself a professional wrestler, to do this for my job, and I was successful at doing that. Throughout the years, anytime that there was discussions between me and WWE, things never lined up. I was told at one point I was too small. I was told I was too old. That the criteria of what they were looking for was always changing, and it never seemed that when I was free and clear that I had what they were looking for. So, before going to WWE, I had become comfortable and reconciled the fact that probably was never going to happen for me, at least not as an active wrestler. Maybe I would go there after my in-ring career. So when the opportunity actually came about and NXT was the opportunity that was there for me, I couldn't pass it up. I think both sides maybe had some reservations. They may have had some reservations about my attitude problem. I'm not corporate friendly, as I like to say. And I had some reservations because I had enough colleagues that had gone there, and I knew what that structure and what that place was about. That it's a huge global conglomerate. It's a corporate entity, and that brings its own set of challenges that I wasn't sure was going to be a fit for me, but I couldn't at least try it. And also, I think that in a lot of people's eyes, right or wrong, no matter how successful you've been or what you've done in the industry, if you've never gone up there, if you never worked for the old man, if you've never been in WWE, then it doesn't really count. And so it was important for me, I guess, in some way, to give that opportunity for myself to see what I could do with it, but also to get those 3 letters on my resume. So that would kind of, for all those people that were discrediting what I had done in my career, that I could say I've done that as well. And I literally had been to the top of the echelon of our industry. So it was a pretty easy decision. The vision they had at NXT at the time seemed like it fit for me. Conversations were pretty quick. There wasn't a whole lot of negotiating. It was, here's the opportunity. And it was something I was keen to do. And so I picked my stuff up from LA and I moved to Florida and started my very quick, but in my eyes, successful tenure in WWE.
I loved your run in WWE. I mean, when you first came into NXT, you were super over. I mean, those fans went crazy your first night out. And I think you were doing really good work as a babyface. Whose decision was it to turn you heel in NXT? Because to me, it kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think if we're going to put me in the best position to be successful and to help other people be successful, I'm probably more natural an antagonist. I like the role of getting under people's skin and helping the other guy then, get over by beating me. So I don't know that there was I don't remember the decision necessarily being made. I think that they had the idea with the program with No Way Jose, which I was excited about. I thought very highly of him and his potential. He's a big cat. And he's a really big dude, super nice guy. Just needed somebody to pull something different out of him, and that's what I tried to do. Right? We'd seen the happy-go-lucky dancing guy, want to have a good time. I wanted to try to pull out something else, a more serious side, so that people could see him outside of that comedic role. And so that was really what my goal was in that program, was to try to turn it up a notch, the intensity, the physicality, and see if he could then step his game up. And I thought he did. It was actually one of my favorite matches. My time there was our takeover match. We started the night out, and I thought we
really enjoyable show.
High, and he did a great job, and yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Oh, fantastic! Sticking with WWE, obviously there's been a lot of big news over the last couple of days, and you mentioned the old man.
Sure. I've been on social media. What's been going on?
Vince is retired, sir.
Oh, no kidding! Wow.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah, I think it's been long enough tenure that he's deserved to have his time in the sunset.
Sure.
What would your opinion be on how he's left, and just generally with Stephanie taking over the company? Do you think that's a good thing, or do you think there's a chance that without Vince they're going to kind of lose course?
I think that what he's built is so big and has so many layers now. I think it would be a long, long time before we would see any repercussions of him not being there. I think the machine is well oiled. They know how to replace the cogs on the wheel if they start to get a little rusty. So, and I would listen, he's retired, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's still in some way, shape, or form providing some counsel, some recommendations to his daughter. I mean, he's been doing this for so long. It was really built in his vision. So, maybe he's going to be a silent, consultant in some way, shape, or form. I just can't see him completely walking away from this, because I don't know that he knows anything else. Like, what is he going to do with his day? Just try not to sneeze? Listen, like, I have, professionally, I have a lot of respect for Vince. I appreciate him. He was the one who put me in WrestleMania based off of my commentary. He changed that match. It was supposed to be a multi-man match. This is my understanding. After he heard me on commentary, he decided that he wanted me in that match. So, I owe a lot to him for that opportunity in that moment. All the stuff outside the ring, that we're all now starting to hear about, I don't think was any big secret to anyone who's been familiar with the wrestling industry for any length of time. There's a seedy underbelly to this industry, as in all entertainment, as in our government, as in any positions of power. Let's just call it like it is. This isn't isolated to just Vince or just this company or just pro wrestling. This is a problem, I think, that if you want to open your eyes and take your head out of the sand, is something that's been an issue in the human race for as long as there's been power and money and influence. And so people can judge how they want to handle that, or how they want to pass judgment on that, if they want to support or not support. But strictly from a wrestling standpoint, WWE's in good hands. They've been doing this long enough. They've got the formula down. There's too much talent. There's too many brains in that company for it to fail. And again, Vince is only a phone call away if they need a little bit of advice.
Very true. Very true. You mentioned your WrestleMania match with Pac or Neville. I love that match. I think it's the best WrestleMania pre-show match they've ever put on. Your reaction?
Kickoff show, not the pre-show. Show. I got corrected on that so many times.
I was going to say, do you think, did you feel slighted at all not being on the main card? Because that was one of the best matches of the whole show. And your reaction after the match ended of just sitting outside of the ring smiling made me laugh so hard. I was just curious.
That was actually the next pay-per-view match I lost at Extreme Rules.
Sorry, I'm getting my wires crossed.
And I've gotten some different feedback on that, and I try to explain it. Like, I think that was the third time, or maybe fourth time, but third time in a row that I, as a babyface, challenged for the championship and lost. You know, and so that look on my face is, you ever have one of those days where it seems no matter what you do, it's going to go wrong, right? Like just no matter how hard you try, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so you're just kind of exasperated, and you're kind of at a loss where it almost becomes a little comical, where you almost start laughing because it's just so absurd.
Yeah.
That was really the mindset of that look, was like, what do I do? Like, I've tried every way of beating this guy, and it's just not happening. And so there was this look of just kind of, I was just at a loss. And also I felt, from a creative standpoint, if you have a babyface fail multiple times at winning a championship, the only thing left for him to do is to become a bad guy, right? I tried to do it the right way. Well, wasn't able to succeed the right way, so maybe I should try doing it the wrong way. And so there was a little bit of that I was feeling too. So to get the psychology behind that look. As far as your first question, did I feel slighted? Not personally, no. Listen, I was extremely grateful in the very short amount of time that I'd been in that company, and really a bit of an afterthought. I didn't come in there with anything that they had creatively for me benchmarked, or you're going to do this, or you're going to become that champion. Like, there was none of that discussion. I was literally just kind of floating a bit at sea, you know, and waiting for opportunity. The opportunity came when I got my eye hole broke, you know, and I got on commentary. I knew that was a new opportunity to be heard by Vince and, you know, potentially get over. So the fact that after, 18 years in the business, I was as old as I ever was. I was probably as small as I'd been in a long time. And here this guy who was too small and too old to be in WWE was now going to walk out in front of 70,000 people, including his friends and family, in Orlando, and have my WrestleMania moment. It didn't matter to me if it was on the kickoff show or the main show, because I was walking out in front of the same 70,000 people and performing in front of them. So I didn't feel personally slighted. I will say that I did feel that for the 205 Live, for that in general, when they were telling us, in one hand, we want this to become its own brand, we want this to be standalone, we want this to be seen as important, I thought they missed a huge opportunity to show the people that this was important by putting us in an important spot, because everybody knew that we were going to go out there and deliver a great match. Yeah. There was no way we couldn't have, right? Like, it's
no. You and Neville, it was just never going to go wrong.
He's too talented. I'm too talented, and we were too motivated to go out there and do anything but have one of the best matches of the night. So you know that we were gonna bring the goods. Now, could they have put that match on the main card and spotlighted it, not for me personally, but for the 205 Live brand? I thought that was a missed opportunity, and also that their actions were not matching what they were saying. Right? If you want this to be important, if you want people to see it as important, if you want to be able to tour with this brand, well, first of all, we should probably have some merchandise up at the merchandise table, which we didn't. And then two, you could put us on the main card to tell all the fans, hey, this stuff's important, and look how good these guys are. And so I thought that, the only disappointment, again, it wasn't for me personally. I was extremely grateful. It was, I thought, a missed opportunity. And again, hearing one thing and then seeing another sometimes is a bit difficult to reconcile.
Okay, no, I can understand that.
And contrary to internet rumor, I was not angry because the match was not on the DVD. This was something I was not even aware of until I literally I would get paid to do paid tweets sometimes, right? To advertise certain things. It just so happened the paid tweet that I got was to advertise WrestleMania coming out of the DVD. So I was like, okay, good. Well, then I looked so as I'm getting the tweet ready, I looked at the DVD. I'm like, well, shit, my match isn't even on here. So, like, I'm about to promote a DVD that I'm not even on, which to me was kind of funny. So I did it the only way that I know how, with some sarcasm, a little tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, too bad the best match of the night wasn't on the DVD. No. Like, I wasn't seriously upset or angry. This wasn't a reason I decided to quit or leave or get fired. Like, it's amazing to me. Once people have an idea of who they think you are, the way that they perceive things and they twist it to kind of fit that vision is amazing to me. And I've dealt with a lot of this over the last few years. But that was an example where people took a tweet that was meant in fun and kind of, joking around, because I was actually getting paid to tweet promoting this DVD. And people read it in a way where I was all angry and upset that my match wasn't on the DVD. And that just wasn't the case. Like, I wasn't even aware of it at the time until after the fact. And yeah, it would have been nice to have some extra royalty money, don't get me wrong, but that certainly wasn't a cause for me to stir some shit or be angry. So just to set that record straight.
Okay. That's fine. Sticking on the subject of that match, do you think it did anything for yours or Pac's career in the long run? Because I do.
Obviously not.
For Neville,
obviously not. We were both gone within a year, so you go out there, you deliver a great match under not ideal circumstances, and instead they said, we think Enzo Amore's the guy. Oh, okay, sure.
Don't get me started on Enzo. Right, no, I'm not going to open up that bag of worms. Right, sticking with the cruiserweight division, you have extensive experience as a heavyweight wrestler. You've been a multiple-time world heavyweight champion. Did you feel a bit pigeonholed that they just stuck you in with the cruiserweight division? Did you feel you had more to give than just being one of the cruiserweights?
I think I knew going in there that my size in their eyes was a detriment, which is fine. Listen, when they told me, hey, we want you to be a building block for this division. We want to build it. We want to create it. We want to make it important. We want it to be its own brand and to tour. That was great. I was more than happy and excited to take that challenge on and really try to, I wasn't worried about graduating out of that division. I was worried about doing what they said they wanted to do, which was let's build this and make it something. Because if you give us the opportunity and you give us time on television and you put us in positions to succeed, there was too much talent there not to. So my only frustration was, as this played out, is I realized that what they were saying and what was actually happening weren't aligned. And there was a lot of missed opportunities to elevate the division. Going back to the Enzo thing, and I have nothing personal against Enzo, but the reasoning behind putting him in that division was, well, let's take someone that's on the main roster that gets a lot of airtime, and let's put him in this division so people will go there to watch. And that's fine, but they could have also accomplished that by just giving the guys that were there the same airtime, right? Giving us those spots, putting us in positions to succeed. At the end of the day, that company is very good at deciding and creating what's important. And it's just by putting people in certain positions, certain time slots, where they are on the match card. And so they know how to do that. They know how to build something if they want. And I don't think that they were ever genuinely interested in that 205 brand and ever becoming anything more than it was.
Okay, good, fair enough. Right, moving on from WWE, because we've talked enough about WWE. I'm really curious. You work with NWA now. What's it like working with Billy Corgan? And how did that relationship come about?
Yeah, and I went in there for the Junior Heavyweight Championship tournament, did a couple of tapings and haven't really heard anything back as far as if they have anything moving forward for me. So, my experience was good. Working with Billy was fine. I've worked with Billy before in Impact. I've had good conversations with him. But yeah, the communication after my last set of tapings just kind of dropped off. I'm not exactly sure why. There's only so many spots. Again, there's only so much TV time to go around. So I came in there. I did what I was asked to do, and wait to see if there's another opportunity down the road.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks. I was just curious. I'm glad you filled that up for me. And I've got to ask you, this is just, yet again, this is for me. I'm a huge New Japan fan. I have a feeling that you would fit like a glove in that company. Has the opportunity ever arisen for you to work in New Japan, or is there a reason you've never worked there?
There just hasn't really been any contact on either side. I haven't really reached out to them. They haven't really reached out to me. And so it's probably one of the few like major promotions that I haven't worked for that I would have some interest in working for. And, they do things now over here in the U.S. So that's, creates some more opportunities. I don't know the political structure. I don't know who's in charge, who I would talk to. I don't know if, my reputation precedes me and there's some, apprehension in bringing me in.
Mate, they hired Will Ospreay. You'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I really, and that's kind of the reality of where I'm at in general is I don't know what perception is around the industry. I haven't really asked. I haven't really reached out a lot of places, and conversely, a lot of places haven't really reached out to me. I'm very busy right now with the Control Your Narrative stuff, and kind of focused in on that. And if other opportunities, present themselves, I'm always willing to listen. I did have some conversations with Pro Wrestling Noah recently, and they were interested in bringing me over, and it was just a matter of timing and scheduling and the protocols to get into the country and things of that sort. Mm-hmm. So, definitely have some interest in while I'm still physically capable of working that style and some fresh matchups and a lot of guys that I've admired for a long time that, I'd love to get in the ring with.
Just for me, Zack Sabre Jr. versus you is an absolute dream match. I think your styles would mix so well.
Made the best vegan win. Yeah.
I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
Moving on, just a quick question. Obviously, AEW's making a lot of waves these days. You had any contact with Tony Khan? Any talks about possibly doing any work over there?
No, me and Cody kept in contact. He's obviously left there now. He's back in WWE. Mm-hmm. I'll be honest, I haven't really reached out, and again, I don't know what their perception of me is. I've heard some rumors, but the rumors, so I don't want to speculate on that. But for me personally, I look at their roster and I just have a hard time figuring out, well, where would they put me? What would they do with me? And I'm not trying to go somewhere to just collect a paycheck and sit in a locker room at this point in my career, And so I want to go places where I'm wanted. I want to go places where I can bring some value. I can, help the next generation of wrestlers, elevate themselves. I'm not interested in going somewhere just to collect a paycheck and gather cobwebs. So, obviously they've got a great thing going. They've got multiple television shows. They've got Ring of Honor, as an offshoot. And if and when the opportunity presents itself and they feel like I'm somebody that can come in there and add some value, I'm more than happy to listen. But it's not a place that right now I am clamoring to get to. Okay. And obviously they're not clamoring to bring me in. So, yeah.
Well, at least it's even on both sides. So.
Yeah.
Moving on to where Control Your Narrative, you mentioned it, we're there. You are now part of Control Your Narrative. How on earth did this happen?
Pretty simply, actually. After living in Mexico last year, I've settled in the Orlando area earlier this year. And, they had a couple of shows. I've been kind of, obviously I know EC3 from working together and Impact. We always had a good relationship there. Kind of was following along what he was doing once he left WWE, and this whole Control Your Narrative concept was interesting to me. We have some similarities in our our backgrounds as far as what we've dealt with within the industry. And I just reached out to him, and I just reached out and said, hey, I appreciate what you're doing. I'm in the area, and if you think there's an opportunity or I can bring some value, let me know. And we quickly hopped on a call with everyone involved and talked about some things creatively, where I was at, what I was hoping to accomplish, where they were at, what they saw for me, and that was it. And I did those first set of shows, and now I'm pretty firmly entrenched right now and helping behind the scenes creatively and with talent and producing and doing all sorts of things that, I've wanted to do for a while, that I haven't had the opportunity other places doing as far as behind the scenes stuff. And so here, not only did they stick by me with all the controversy, I think I trended 3 times that first week that they announced me, the very angry cancel culture, being very upset that I wasn't as canceled as they thought I was. But they stuck with me through that. And, again, I like going places where I'm valued and I'm not just being tolerated, but I'm being celebrated. And they've welcomed me with open arms, and, they want to use me in multiple ways to help that company grow. And I'm more than happy to do that. And, I think there's a lot of potential. I think starting any wrestling company is difficult, very difficult. And especially when you weren't really trying to start a wrestling company. I mean, I don't think EC3's vision was ever to make this its own standalone wrestling company. This is just how things have progressed. And so with that, it's important to have a good team and a good foundation to build on. And I think that we're doing that. I think there's a good camaraderie within the company with the talent. And going back to something I said earlier, everyone gets treated the same. There's no separate locker rooms. There's none of that, politic bullshit. We're all a bunch of men and women trying to build something together, and we all talk to each other like we're all on the same level. We respect where everyone's at, professionally and personally. And I think that if people give this a chance to really see what it's about, as opposed to listening to the online chatter of what people think it's about, I think that people will appreciate what we're trying to do, and they'll also see that it's really nothing like that they probably heard based on rumors of innuendo and dirt sheets.
Oh, I managed to catch half one of your Control Narrative shows today. The feed wasn't very great because obviously it's a bit harder to get over here, but I was fascinated. And I think that's the best word I can use. Is it's fascinating stuff. The way it's shot, the way the matches are produced, everything is distinctly different from everybody else. Like, I've never watched a wrestling show like a Control Your Narrative show before, and I only saw half the show. But you mentioned you get to do a lot of backstage work. Would you like to elaborate on that? I mean, what's everyone's dead camaraderie, but what's the atmosphere like for you working backstage? Do you feel like you're in the right place?
I do, because again, I've been a lightning rod for controversy for a lot of my career. Some of it justifiably so.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, and some of it was earned. Like some of it justifiably so. And then on the other hand, a lot of things that have been said and implied about me just aren't true. And especially some of the more serious allegations. There's just no truth to these. But the reality is it doesn't matter how many times I say that. It doesn't matter if I provide evidence. People have already made their decision of who I am and what I'm about, and I'm not going to change those opinions. But to have a platform and have guys that are willing to stand behind me and believe in who I am, are willing to take the good with the bad, I do feel like I'm in the right place. As we continue to really dive into what we want to do here, and that is to bring some of the reality of who we are as people into this world of pro wrestling. I think that's going to be something that's going to be unique. Something I've said for a long time as an entertainer is my job as an entertainer is to help people forget about their problems. And one thing I've done in the last 10 years with my platform since writing my book, and I go out and I give speeches, is I realize I can actually help people start to fix and solve their problems. And that's so much more rewarding than just helping people forget about them. And so I think that, one thing that we're trying to do with CYN is really dive into some of these topics and talk about mental health and talk about the concept of forgiveness, and really, personal responsibility, being a conscious consumer, what are you supporting? And so that for me is very appealing because, again, I don't mind helping you forget about your problems, but I'd really much prefer helping people start to fix and solve problems. And the only way we do that is having open and honest dialogue, right? And that's, that I think is the key. And so, yeah, being back, kind of being the office, so to speak, which is a funny term to me because I don't view myself any differently than anybody else that's there. But it does give me more responsibilities. I am looked to, when people have questions, they look to me for answers. And my input is important to what we're doing, but not any more important than anybody else that's there. So I'm just trying to lead by example. I'm trying to do whatever I can, whatever hat I need to wear, whether it's producing matches, whether it's helping with the creative, whether it's dealing with talent. I'm here for it, and we're going to keep building this and growing as best we can.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I'm going to pick your brain a little. As you're now in the creative part of professional wrestling, what is something that you see mainstream companies doing wrong, but they still think they're doing right?
I'm going to catch some flack for this one. Now, full disclosure, I don't watch a lot of pro wrestling. I really don't. Like, weirdly, I know this is going to maybe give me some heat. I don't really even consider myself a fan of pro wrestling because it's not something that I do in my spare time. It's not something I follow in my spare time. I have other interests and things that I do. So I follow enough to keep informed. It's my business. It's it's what I do for work. So I keep myself informed in that way. But I don't watch Dynamite every week. I don't watch WWE programming. I don't watch New Japan. I don't really watch a lot of wrestling. I think because the pro wrestling that I love is the stuff I grew up watching, right? Like the old Crockett stuff. That to me is pro wrestling. So to answer your question, and I don't think this is just exclusive to just the pro wrestling companies or the pro wrestling community, but I think that companies in general are over pandering and catering to the cancel culture. And you get 50 vocal people online who want to complain or bitch about something, and these companies feel the need to get down on their hands and knees and beg for forgiveness. And I think that we've lost a little bit of perspective of how powerful and how big these groups are, because they're just not, right? And it seems like if 100 people tweet about something all angry, it seems like it's a lot, but we're in a world with 7 billion people. So what's 100 opinions? And it seems to be it's the same 100 people that'll never be happy. They're always going to be perpetually outraged about something, And so I said, like, you're never going to be woke enough for that woke community. And so I think that, there's a lot of companies, especially corporate entities, that are so afraid of that backlash that they think if they appease them, that somehow they're going to win. But I just don't believe that there's ever going to be enough appeasement to keep these people happy or to isolate you or insulate you from further outrage. So I think that right now, I think that that's something I see not just in wrestling, but I see just in general, right?
Okay. No, it's fascinating. Thank you very much. Just that was pure curiosity on my part, so thank you very much for answering the question.
And here's the beautiful thing. Here's the beautiful thing. I'm already canceled. So it doesn't really matter what I say. I'm already canceled. So you cancel me. Cancel me. Like, it's all good.
I live by a sentence. If you're falling off a cliff, you might as well try and fly. You've got nothing else to lose.
Yeah, there you go.
I think that's the best way to live. Moving backwards a little bit. Now, I know you said you don't watch a lot of the product, but I'm assuming you've you still hear enough. AEW have hired an awful lot of new talent, like to the point that their roster, as you mentioned earlier, it's very stacked. Do you feel that they're spending too much time hiring ex-WWE guys and not focusing enough on their own guys? Or do you think they can find a balance between the two?
Oh, man, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how many guys they've hired from WWE or not. I mean, I think, listen, it's always about balance. Life's about balance. So this is no different. Life is about balance. And it's not about where the guys come from. It's about what you do with them once they get there. And, some people will say it's a detriment. On the other hand, it keeps everybody with a fire lit under their ass. Your spot's not safe. You can't put it in cruise control. There's 15 people behind you that want your spot, want your TV time. So that breeds competition in a good way. It's no different than, again, Tony's in the football business. It's the same thing there. You got a 53-man roster, but you only got so many starters. But if your second and third string are also high-quality performers and athletes, it's going to keep your starters on their toes and making sure they're practicing hard and they're showing up. Because if not, there's too deep, right, to take your spot. Or again, as we see, especially with the style that we're wrestling now, injuries are a real thing, and it's a real nice luxury to have 2 or 3 of your top guys get injured and be able to plug 3 or 4 guys in their spot and not really miss a beat because you have that much talent. So it really works both ways. It just depends on, what lens you want to see it with. You want to look at it through a negative lens, you can pick it apart and be negative. If you want to look at it from a positive standpoint, there's a lot of positives. It just comes down to your perspective.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks a lot. And just going back to control your narrative. Obviously, I'm assuming you've got a good relationship with EC3. You guys have known each other for a very long time. What's Adam Scherr like to work with? Because we heard all sorts of stuff in WWE that he was a bit abrasive and that sometimes he wasn't willing to do what the company wanted him to do or any of this other stuff, but I've always considered all this rumours. You've now got first-hand knowledge of Adam. What's he like to work with?
And I knew Adam a little bit in WWE too. He was down in NXT for a little bit when I was down there. And then obviously I moved to the main roster and he was up there. So I had known him before this. Listen, Adam is, what's the best way to describe Adam? He knows his value. He's been successful in other avenues in his life before pro wrestling. So I think that he brings a lot of important characteristics as a leader and being vocal, being outspoken, being very clear about what expectations are. I think that's important. There's no secret heat, like in pro wrestling, you have heat, but you don't know it because nobody will tell you to your face. We don't deal with any of that. We're all men and we treat each other like men and we don't play any of these high school games. And so, I think that bodes well. I think Adam's also been very authentic with us. He's I've seen him cry a couple of times in some of these sessions we have where we kind of, I almost call them like therapy sessions where we get out in front of the group and we tell our story and we really share, again, we're all human beings. We all, we're not just wrestling characters on TV. We're human beings. We have emotion. We have feelings. We have our own struggles. He's been very transparent in that. And that's powerful because when you're at his stature and then the guys that are underneath him see that he's willing to put himself out there and be vulnerable and be transparent, it allows other guys to feel like they can do the same thing. And so I think that's a great quality that he has. And the other thing too is, he only knows one style of wrestling. He's only ever done WWE. So on the other hand, like this is all new to him, and I think that he's shown a willingness to recognize and lean on guys like me who have a whole different experience within this industry that he's never got to help him learn and guide him through some of these things that he hasn't dealt with before. And I think that's another important part of being a leader is understanding where your strengths are, understanding where your deficiencies are, and then surrounding yourself with people that can help fill those gaps. and help you learn and grow that way too. So, he brings a lot to the table beyond just his size and his face recognition and his experience. And we're only going to go as far as he goes, and as we go collectively. So he's definitely an important part of what we're doing, and he's very motivated, and that's a good thing. To be that size and have that skill and to be motivated, that's all. Those are all good things.
Ah, fantastic. Right, and yeah, again, this is just before we start finishing up, because I've taken up quite a lot of your time today, sir. Who is, in today's entire landscape, who do you want to wrestle? Like, if you could pick one guy to have just a 20-minute banger with, who would it be?
I was going to say Vince McMahon, but he just retired. So I guess that one's not going to happen. There's a dream match scenario, and I keep, I always throw the name Chris Jericho out there. I mean, just because he's, a guy that I grew up watching, who I have a ton of respect for, and I think that our styles would mesh well, whether it's on the mic or in the ring. And he's a guy that I can learn a lot from, being in there, and so that's something I'm always interested in, is getting in there with guys that I can learn a lot from at this stage of my career. Beyond that, I mean, man, there's I'd love to do Will Ospreay again. Me and him had a match back in the belt collector days, and it was a pre-belt collector days, and I think we had a great match. But he was still kind of making his way, trying to break through, and he's broke through now. He's a grown man now. He's put some size on. He's put the hard work in. I think that's an interesting matchup. But again, I don't have this big long list. I think that's more for the fans to have these lists, and then for me to see the list and go, oh, that's interesting, that's intriguing. I'd love to get in there with Braun. I think that me and him could tell a hell of a story. And he's never been seen as a work rate guy. But I think you get in there with the right guy, and we could tell an easy David and Goliath story. But I think that it could be really entertaining.
No, that'd be really fun. If you don't mind, Austin, we're just going to jump to the comments because a couple of people have asked some questions. That's okay.
Sure.
I'm blind as a bat, which is why I'm leaning forward like this. Okay, Russ Morgan would love to know who your favourite promoter that you've ever worked for was.
Who's my favorite promoter I ever worked for? Who paid me the most? Vince McMahon. Who paid me the most? Vince McMahon. He's my favorite promoter. There's been a lot of good promoters out there. It's probably easier to list my least favorite promoters, like Ian Rotten, Gary Yap, the guys that still owe me money. But yeah, there's a guy that runs in Milwaukee, Angel Armani. He's been doing it for a long, long time. He's a guy that helped me early in my career. I helped him actually promote some shows back when I lived there. But he was one of my favorite promoters because he paid everybody the same. He ran a really good show. The fans always had a good time, but he never used any big-name talent, right? He used all his local guys. He built those guys up, but he knows how to promote, and that's why he sells out every month without using any internet darlings. He pays all his guys a good payday. And if there's more money in the door, that goes to the talent because he's not trying to pay his electric bill with the wrestling show. So my favorite promoters I ever worked for are guys that aren't using that show to pay their credit card bill at the end of the month, because those promoters try to find a way to steal $10 from everybody because that pays their bill. But the guy who already has a real job and doesn't do this to pay his bills, those are always my favorite promoters to work for.
Okay, brilliant. Alex Pearce would like to know, do you think you will ever return WWE now Vince is retired?
I mean, never say never, but I don't see a scenario where that would happen, but who knows? I just know for me personally, I'm not a huge fan of big corporate structures. I didn't, when I started my wrestling journey, I wasn't like, someday I want to work for one of the largest corporations in the world, Not who I am as a person.
I imagine that wasn't your goal.
Yeah, I like my freedom. I like being able to be myself. I like being able to express myself. I don't like to be owned. So for those reasons, And I have no wife and no kids, so I don't have like these bills or these other people that are relying on me to support them. So I don't ever feel like I have to do that. I'm very, very lucky in that way. So, you know, never say never, but it's certainly nothing that really crosses my mind on a day-to-day basis, because I know what the structure is there, and it's amazing if it works for you, but if it doesn't work for you, it's a challenge. And I don't think they'd ever want to pay me the number that I would want to go back and deal with that.
Okay. All right, fantastic. Thanks for letting me know. And finally, from the questions to the comments, would you ever consider doing commentary once you hang up the boots?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Maybe I would go back to WWE to do commentary. Maybe that's a role I could see myself in. But yeah, I enjoy commentary. You know, it's one of the things I'm most grateful for in my time there was the opportunity to do commentary and really like do it at the highest level very, very early into my commentary career. I got thrust into, you're live, you're on Monday Night Raw, and you're learning on the job. And you know, so thankful for Corey Graves and Michael Cole, you know, helping me in that, you know, being very, very gracious and helping me, you know, passing their knowledge on to help me get comfortable in that. I had a lot of fun doing it. I learned a lot. And yeah, you know, someday, once I hang the boots up, if that opportunity presents itself, I would definitely entertain it.
Fantastic. And as my brother's just sent this in, he must be watching from home.
Yeah.
What's your biggest regret?
My biggest regret. Bound for Glory. Bound for Glory, was it 2018? The John Morrison incident.
Ah.
Yes. Now, understand what my regret is. I don't regret the build up to that match. I don't regret the match, and I don't regret what happened after the match. But my biggest regret is I passed on the contract offer that Impact Wrestling put on the table after Bound for Glory. I was going through some personal things at the time, you know, going through a bit of a rough spot, and they put a very nice contract on the table after Bound for Glory. Because again, I was always supposed to come back. That wasn't how I was supposed to leave the company. And, you know, I made a decision at that time to pass on the contract as I was working through these other things. And it's something I still regret, because the opportunity to go back hasn't presented itself. I think because I never did go back, a lot of people viewed that incident in a certain light. And so that's probably one of the, you know, and I probably have other regrets. I mean, you know, I'm someone who probably spends a little bit too much time in his head reliving my past and mistakes I've made. I'm certainly working at being more present, and meditation and breath work have certainly helped with that. But if that's one that clearly sticks out, man. I wish I would have taken that contract offer. I wish I would have came back and had the rematch with John. I thought we had a great program going. We had people really believing in what we were doing. And again, I was just dealing with some personal stuff. And then I made the decision at the time to pass on the contract, thinking that I'd be able to take that opportunity down the road. And it just hasn't happened. And, you know, maybe down the road that opportunity does, you know, represent itself. I'd love that. I'd love to go back and finish my Impact career in a different way. But if it doesn't,
that'd be great.
Then I need to live with how things are.
Ah, well, that's completely understandable, Austin. Thank you very much. Right, we've got about 2 minutes left. If you don't mind, I'm just going to hit you with some quick rapid-fire questions.
We're good. I got time. I'm not in a hurry.
Brilliant. Now, these are just quick ones from the guys on the team. Bryan Danielson or CM Punk?
Bryan Danielson.
Bryan Danielson. Okay. Roman Reigns or John Cena?
Man, that's a tough one. I'm going to go John Cena.
Okay. Stone Cold or The Rock?
Stone Cold.
Stone Cold, okay. Undertaker or Sting?
Man, Sting, because I wrestled him.
Oh, you just became my favourite person.
Yeah.
Britt Baker or Bianca Belair?
I guess I'll go with, you know what, I'll go with Britt Baker because I could use some dental work.
Nice. TNA or AEW?
I mean, I'm going to go with TNA just because I'm going to be completely biased and a homer here. You know, I mean, I'm a former world champion. I gotta go with TNA.
That's what I'd say. John Moxley or Dean Ambrose?
John Moxley.
Good answer. That's what. Kenny Omega or Seth Rollins?
Seth Rollins.
Okay. And second to last one, MJF or The Miz?
Ooh. You know what? I got to give it to The Miz, man. Good on him. Going from the real world and having the career that guy's had. Thumbs up.
I completely agree.
Yeah, a lot of respect for that guy.
And last question before I let you go, Austin. You've been an absolute joy. Who do you think's going to win at SummerSlam? Roman or Brock?
I don't know. I guess I'll go with Brock.
Brilliant. All right, well, Austin, right, couple of minutes left. Have you got anything you'd like to promote or just chill, be my guest?
Not necessarily. Obviously, CYN, Control Your Narrative, we just announced a 24-city tour that will be starting in October. You can find all that at controlyournarrative.com. You can go to my Instagram, which is Austin Healy Aries. I've been putting up lots of my smoothie recipes and food recipes for those interested. Obviously, you can keep up to date with all my different wrestling, whereabouts. I've got something pretty exciting happening that I will just put a little tidbit here. Looks like I will be heading to Saudi Arabia at the end of August for a wrestling show. The details will be forthcoming. It's a new promotion there, and contract has been sent over, and so that should be announced within the next day or two. I'm excited for that.
Awesome.
And otherwise, yeah, just, you can go to my Twitter. If you want to get angry at me, go to my Twitter at TheAustinAries. I don't tweet there much. I've learned my lesson. Nothing good comes from Twitter. But, yeah, and that's really about it.
Right.
You can copy my book, Food Fight. You can get that at Pro Wrestling Tees at my Pro Wrestling Tees store if you want to learn about my journey as a plant-based pro athlete and hear about how my career came about and how that coincided with me becoming a conscious consumer. And I think that's about all I got.
All right, well, fantastic. I cannot thank you enough, Austin. Like I said, my second interview, and like you said earlier on, I've hit the AA level. I don't know where I'm going to go from here. It's all downhill. I'm screwed in general. This is the best I'm ever going to get, and it's never going to get any higher. So, Wrestle Buddies, thank you so much for watching. Anybody that's tuned in today and sent in questions, I couldn't appreciate it more. If you like what we do here at Wrestle Buddy, please, for me, just like this video, share, and subscribe. It helps us all out with the YouTube algorithm, and it's the only way they really know we exist. So, that's all. This is the part where we wave. Thank you very much, Mr. Aries. It's been an absolute pleasure. Bye now.
Everybody, have a good one.